You wanna know the best places to live near Universal Studios Orlando? Well, in this video, I'm gonna cover just that. I'm gonna give you some key areas that I have found since living here that if you're obsessed with Universal, you really should consider these 5 different sub-cities around Orlando. They all have their pros and cons, and we're gonna dive into each and every one of them right now. All right, so the first one on top of our list is going to be Winter Park, Florida. So Winter Park is one of these areas just heading north of downtown Orlando. So for those of you who are looking to not only be close to Universal, and that time is about 23 minutes, but you also want to be close to downtown in Orlando, then Winter Park is one of those areas. Also, for those of you that are going to college, Winter Park also tends to be pretty good being close to the major colleges here in Orlando. So Winter Park is probably the second most affordable place on average out of all the 5 that I'm going to be giving you today. Winter Park's like the second most affordable location. And I say second most because you can find affordable options, but at the same time, it is hit and miss around the area. It depends on what suburb and things like that. So the pros of Winter Park is its location. Like I said, it's close to downtown, 23 minutes from Universal, about 23 minutes with no traffic to the airport. Now, obviously that ranges wildly because it's Orlando and traffic is insane all the time. But the location is very, very good for those of you who want to be close to the city. I was just in Winter Park, I think it was about a couple weeks ago. And you know, it feels like, you know, compared to like Dr. Phillips and like a lot of the new construction heading towards Polk County and Lake County, being in Orange County in Winter Park, you definitely feel the older side of Orlando. And it's not really a bad thing. But also a lot of the homes tend to be a little bit older depending on what part of Winter Park you're in. The average price is a pro when it comes to Winter Park. So you're sitting around $420,000 and up for single family. You can find cheaper options. Rent will be, you know, and it's not too crazy. So the overall cost isn't too bad when it comes to Winter Park. And when it comes to the cons, for me, you know, the schools aren't always the best. They're not the worst, but I call them, they're about the Orlando average, right? The average school rating, if you look publicly, it's okay. It's not the best schools. Out of all the places on the list, Winter Park is not the best place when it comes to schools. And some areas it tends to rank a little bit higher in crime. Obviously, it's closer to the city. Certain neighborhoods, it's like everything, you know, block by block by block. In some areas, not gonna be as best of a crime rating compared to the other ones on the list. Now, some of the other ones on the list are substantially more expensive. Overall, the cons really just comes down, for me, it comes down to schools, and it really comes down to some of those areas when it comes to crime data, depending what you're trying to do. Now, if you're just single or you're just couples, probably irrelevant because you can find nice areas for probably it fits your budget a lot more, but those are some of the big things when it comes to Winter Park. Okay, so the next one on our list is gonna be Winter Garden, Florida. Not to be confused with Winter Park. Winter Garden is heading west from where Winter Park is. You're not as close to the main city of Orlando anymore. So Winter Garden has a lot of things going for it, but let's get into the pros. So the pros I find with Winter Garden, we just had a client there that bought recently. The big pro when it comes to Winter Garden is still location. You're not heading as far west yet to where you can't just get on the highway or a toll road and just head into the city or Universal or the airport. So location is still a plus. Now, you're looking at about 22 minutes with no traffic to Universal Studios, but heading to the airport, no traffic, you're at 26 minutes. And I can tell you, when we had a client that met me in Winter Garden before, it took them 45 minutes to get to the airport to Winter Garden during that peak time. So understand, the location, the one thing that is a negative, it's a pro, but depending on what time you're having to travel to and from Winter Garden, that can really, really destroy you when it comes to getting to and from maybe work or whatever. Now, another pro I find is the amazing communities in Winter Garden. So in Winter Garden, there are a lot of great communities. And every sub-city in Orlando has good communities and bad communities, but overall in Winter Garden, it just tends to be a good group of people that live there. And to be honest with you, it's also one of the more popular areas when it comes to those looking for great areas, but not trying to go as far as like Lake Mary in the Orlando area. So the schools are really good. Obviously, great communities, great schools. When it comes to the schools, so one thing I hear a lot, we ran into this with our kids, and I heard a lot of other clients that ran into this with theirs as well. When it comes to schools, a lot of parents will call the school, they won't get an answer, they won't get a call back, they get nothing. A lot of people get really upset with it. They're like, this is terrible. I don't like it, but I do think it's because there are so many people moving to the area that a lot of these schools are just flooded with phone calls, and like, how can you get back? Like, if your job, right, is probably not getting paid enough to begin with administration, and you gotta field calls all day, probably not gonna be the best. But I can tell you, many of our clients and friends have actually had really good luck when it comes to the schools in Winter Garden, getting back to them. Someone had, obviously, one of their kids had mental issues, and they were able to communicate and get them in the right classes and the right thing, take a tour of the school. Like, it was this whole thing. So I think the schools in Winter Garden are top notch. Their ratings look really good. And hey, that experience alone shows you like how above and beyond a lot of those schools try and go when it comes to the area. Now, the cons of Winter Garden. Really, the biggest con could be location, depending on where you're trying to travel to. If you're just going to Universal, you're probably gonna be okay most days, and not. Airport can be a little tricky. But one of the biggest cons is really the cost for this one for me. So the average single family house is gonna be above $500,000. Again, maybe you can find something a little bit less, but you're not gonna find the deals that you can with some of the other ones that we're about to cover inside of this list. But the big con is that cost. You can find townhomes obviously for cheaper than that, but you still have HOA costs, CDD costs. Like, the Winter Garden is not the cheapest place around Orlando. Now, the one we're about to talk next, it is generally a lot cheaper than the one we're about to cover, but at the same time, that's one of the biggest costs for me when it comes to Winter Garden, is that cost of living. All right, the next one we're talking about is Dr. Phillips. Now, Dr. Phillips is one of the most popular, sought-after communities in Orlando for people that stay here and live here long term. Biggest pro of Dr. Phillips is the location. You're not stuck in the city, but you're not too far from the city. Like, you are there right next to the main area in Orange County. So you are about 10 minutes from Universal Studios, and in fact, it can even be a couple minutes shorter than that, depending what part of Dr. Phillips you're in. And you're also only about 15 minutes, again, depending what part you're in, to the airport. Like, Dr. Phillips is the location. Just like Winter Garden, because it's not too far south. Obviously, you go Winter Garden, Windermere, Dr. Phillips, amazing schools, obviously higher cost communities, so that leads to a lot better schools. Crime is really low. Dr. Phillips is a really, really nice place. And a lot of people do strive to be inside of this community, so it's a very, very popular one. But biggest pros are the location, and schools are just top notch. And then third, obviously, if you can afford to get into this community, many of the communities are very safe, they're very friendly, and they're very, very nice. You can even find gated communities inside Dr. Phillips. It is one of the more sought after ones here, but it's not all sunshine. So some of the big cons when it comes to Dr. Phillips, biggest one is cost. So obviously, just like Winter Garden, you're well over $500,000 for single family homes to get into Dr. Phillips. Now, not counting townhomes, condos, things like that. I've seen some people even get rental deals if maybe you want to rent there until you can afford to purchase. I've seen that too. But Dr. Phillips is not a cheap one. And really, that's the biggest con I have for this area, is the cost. I mean, there's really not much else that's really going against Dr. Phillips other than the fact that it's expensive to get into it. So if you're looking to get into Dr. Phillips, it is not a cheap one. Oh, if you are looking to move and relocate the area, cost of living is a concern, you're looking to purchase, you're looking to make that home decision, make sure you get the right neighborhood in the right area, which don't forget we are about to get into, but this number coming up down below is how you can get a hold of me. You can call, text, email, does not matter. I'm here to help you. Like, I've had so many conversations, especially being into this new year, every single day and week with people who are relocating to the area, and I love it. I've been in the military, I've relocated probably more than I've ever wanted to, and I can tell you, if you are looking to relocate to the area, it's what we do, is relocation. And even when you get here, you're probably gonna wanna move again. It happens to all of us. But making sure you get that plan done the right way to get you from A to Z is what we do best with me and my team. So reach out to us, let's have a conversation, and let's get to the next topic. Okay, so the next area we're talking about is personally one of my favorites, and I actually just did a video on this area specifically, and that's Clermont, Florida, and also Groveland, which is right next to Clermont, just heading a little bit further west. But this area obviously is really, really well, and for those of you who don't like to be near the city, this could be a thing. So, pros. You feel more secluded. So when it comes to Clermont and Groveland, it just feels like you're just away from the craziness and the tourism that is Orlando, right? Like, a lot of people who are obviously living south on the 27 in like Davenport, things like that, they're like, yeah, forget this, and they're heading to Clermont area. So big pro is that you feel secluded inside the community. Now, schools also can be really decent around the Clermont area. I do think they're expanding. It's taking time to get there, so it's slowly working its way up. But the schools generally can be a lot better than a lot of the other areas that are a little bit more crowded around the Orlando area. So that's one of the big pluses. The third big plus when it comes to Claremont is the affordability. So because you are willing to go a little bit out there, you can still find single family homes in the 300s and the 400s. Even new construction in Groveland is going nuts right now. Even there's a couple still around Claremont going on. So if you're looking to get a new home, that could also be a huge plus. And you're only about, now we'll get actually with this, we'll say that for the cons. So in the cons, location. You're a little bit farther out there. You're about 33 minutes from Universal, and you're about 40 minutes from the airport, not on crazy traffic times. So keep that in mind. It is not the closest location when it comes to these. In fact, out of all the things, all the ones we're covering today, and we got one more after this, Claremont's the farthest out there. So understand, if you're looking to stay close to the city, Claremont's not it. Now, another con, obviously, is being a little bit out there. Maybe you want a lot of different amenities and stores and things like that. Claremont is getting there. Just recently, this last December, 2023, we had a Costco open in Claremont. So it's coming. Like if there's a certain store or restaurant that you really want to have close to where you live, it's coming. Claremont is expanding. In 5 years in the future, who knows what it's going to look like up there? Probably as crazy it is in the rest of Orlando. But if you're looking for certain things, right now that's a con. They just got a big box store, so that's a plus. But depending on where you like to shop, it could be a con. Now I can tell you most things are up there near Claremont, so this may not be a con. But I have had some clients complain a little bit or say, hey, we're missing this and this. So understand that might be a con for you. Also, reiterating again, depending where you work, and I've had this with some clients, we sit down, we look at where they're working and realize that while they would love to live in Claremont, it substantially adds time onto their traffic because they had to leave Claremont to get to the places around Orlando that they work. So again, keep Claremont in mind. It's affordable, but it's out there. And if depending where you're working, where you're traveling, it can be a huge, huge con when it comes to living your daily life in the area. All right, and the final thing we're gonna talk about, and we just did a video on this, and that's Hunters Creek in Kissimmee, Florida. So Hunters Creek is one of the top neighborhoods that people really talk about when it comes to moving to Orlando. In fact, I hear this all the time in comments, when people reach out and text, I hear it all the time. Hunters Creek is one of those top areas, and for good reason that we'll get into right now. So, big pro, location. Obviously, you're not too far from Universal Studios, let's say about 30, 20 minutes. It really depends again on the traffic. And you're about 15 or so from the airport. Again, no traffic, it can vary, but you're there, right? You're not as bad as Claremont like we just talked about. Hunters Creek is that location. Now, some people might see this as a con. Hunters Creek average home price is $500,000 plus for single family. The reason I put price as a pro, that if you're willing to be in townhomes, maybe condos, but especially townhomes, you still see options for under $300,000 or the mid 300s for a decent townhome. So understand that maybe you're looking to move to Orlando, you're okay getting something smaller, this could be a fit. Now, again, price can be a con. Trust me, things are expensive like it used to be, it's insane. But I think it's a pro that if you can get into Hunters Creek, great area, low crime rate, like it can be a big, big place for you to get into. But again, there are cons. Now, going into the cons of Hunters Creek, the biggest thing for me, maybe for you too, it's tourist central. All right, Kissimmee is where tourists go. You're not far from Disney. You're actually closer to Disney sometimes than you are to Universal, but it's that tourism really builds. During peak times and most of the year, when you leave Hunters Creek, you got tourists everywhere, which means the traffic can be congested. You're dealing with people that don't even live here, which if you will catch on quite fast, can be very, very annoying, especially when you're just trying to live your life. And also, a third con that I find with the area, it's that the schools aren't rated the best. Now, I'm not saying they're the worst, and again, look at public data, make up your own opinion. But schools generally they just seem to have a lower rating. Now, it's a lot of factors that go into that, so take it with a grain of salt. But when you look at like the Claremont, Winter Garden, when you look heading more north and northwest of Orlando, the main city, you just find a lot better average rated schools. So that's one of the cons for me when it comes to Hunters Creek. But that's really the only con. Other than that, great location, price can be subjective, maybe it's good for you, maybe it's not, but you're close to the theme parks, and that's a really big plus for a lot of people. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to let me know down in the comments below, out of all these 5 areas, which one do you think fits you best and why? Also, maybe I missed a different area, because obviously there's so many different areas around Orlando. So if you think I missed one, let me know, and I am happy to do a deep dive into that, maybe go specifically to that city and let people know more about it. So also, if you're looking to make the move to Orlando, you need help, there's a number coming up down below is how you can get a hold of me. Call, text, email, does not matter. We specialize in relocation. It's what we do. And a lot of other people around Orlando that are trying to help you move here, guess what? I don't think they shoot you straight. The reality is a lot of them make everything seem grand and perfect. The reality is it's not perfect. Relocation is dirty, it's hard, and if you're moving from far away, it becomes even worse. So reach out to us, let us help you create that plan to get you to Orlando safely and happily, and also maybe to be close to Universal Studios. So I hope you got value in this video. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.